He's editor-at-large at The Spectator. He is the host of the Big Ben podcast. You can follow him on X at Ben Domenech, who's a Fox News contributor. Ben, I want to begin by asking you generally, we talked about Charlie last week. What has changed, if anything, in the week since?
Well, I think what's changed in the week since, Hugh, is that this story has become something that I think has actually woken the left up to the fact that it's not going to go away quickly. I think that there was an illusion in the initial period among those who were unfamiliar with Charlie or the depth of his appeal to the American people well beyond the conservative sphere, that I think allowed many on the left and in the media to treat this as if this was going to be a 48, 72-hour story. And then I think they were shocked at everything that happened over the weekend after we talked last week, in terms of the outpouring of affection for Charlie at NFL stadiums, college stadiums, sporting events across the country, public events, people dedicating things to him, pitchers wearing his name on their hats, NASCAR drivers dedicating their win to him. It's one of these situations where I think the left was rudely awakened by how his appeal stretched far beyond what they knew. When Coldplay is stopping their concert to encourage people to pray for your family, it means that you had a cultural resonance that is far beyond that of just a political activist, which is what I think they thought Charlie was. And a big part of that, I truly believe, was driven by the fact that he was talking about more than politics. He was talking about faith. And that's something that in this particular moment for this generation of unchurched Americans, had a significant resonance in terms of their lives and in terms of what they saw in him. You've seen that continue, and I think you're only going to see it continue. And I also think that it has developed into a story nationally that is an argument about speech, the appropriateness of speech, and you see a lot of lefties who didn't have any problem with the government action or the populist action against certain figures in the past, now suddenly developing a problem with it. And I think that that's going to be something that continues as well as a story that stretches beyond this moment and into the future.
Let me stay with point one, and we'll get to point two. Point one, I want to play for you a minute 21 clip of Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Cardinal of New York,
yes, this was great.
This morning, cut 4.
So when I heard the tragic news, I said, I wonder who he was. And then all of a sudden, this overwhelming sense of sorrow and kind of renewal. And I thought, I got to learn about this guy. And the more I learned about him, I thought, this guy's a modern-day St. Paul. He was a missionary. He's an evangelist. He's a hero. He's one, I think, that knew what Jesus meant when he said, the truth will set you free. And to do it, now, I understand he was pretty blunt. And he was pretty direct. He didn't try to avoid any controversy. He didn't even try to avoid confrontation. The difference is the way, the mode, the style that he did it, always with respect. And not only was that a gracious, kind of virtuous thing to do, it's effective. Because when your opponents see, this guy kind of respects me. We kind of disagree here, but he kind of enjoys me. And he's thanking me for being here. And he's telling me he appreciates the trust I have in him in sharing my views. I thought, this guy can teach us something. I've been spending the last week reading about him. And so last night, I was at NYU Catholic Student Center, about 200 students there. This is what they talked about.
Wow.
This is
What do you think, Ben?
Well, I think that's, first off, it's very moving, but it's also, I think, indicative of the fact that there are so few people who truly can be spoken of in this day and age as evangelists, as people who go into the other side and that will interact with them. And part of that, quite frankly, Hugh, I blame on the mass media. I blame on the fact that we no longer have places where these conversations happen, and that they are conversations, that they are debates, they are even arguments when they get heated. But, the number of places that this even happens is so few and far between. You can really list them very shortly. I would say that Bill Maher is basically the last holdout of a place where you're likely to see two people doing it. Otherwise, you're basically seeing folks going hammer and tongs with, one person who's surrounded and the like. And look, this is something that I think we have lost in America as a culture, and that is significant because it is something that I think is central to the way that we adjudicate and converse about the deepest disagreements that we have in ways that are healthy and in ways that move things forward. And look, it's the people who, ultimately the folks who rejected Charlie and viewed him as being just a fascist Nazi, what have you, pick your insult. They were the one who were caricaturing him, and so many people who did not agree with him also respected what he was willing to do because it is such a rarity in this day and age.
Now, I was listening by complete accident and coincidence to N.T. Wright's commentary on the Acts last night. And he's one of the greatest theologians in the world.
And you're going OG there. That's great.
Yeah, this is OG. And he was talking about the martyrdom of Stephen, which is early in Acts. And Stephen's last prayer was to pray for his enemies and the people who were killing him. I am curious about the memorial service because Matt Continetti has warned, don't let it become Wellstone 2.0. Do you think they can prevent that?
It's so funny because my wife told me that he had warned that, and it was literally the very first thing that I said to her when we were driving in the car together and they were announcing it was, do you remember Paul Wellstone? I mean, I really hope that doesn't happen. But please continue.
Well, one of the things N.T. Wright quoted was a poem that I was unfamiliar with by Francis Thompson, a Catholic mystical poet who wrote, I think in the early 1900s, but when so sad thou canst not sadder cry, and upon thy so sore loss shall shine the traffic of Jacob's ladder, pitched betwixt heaven and Charing Cross. Because he lived in London. So he's saying that normally when you're in deep grief, sometimes you'll get a glimpse of angels, and that's a trend in theological history. Mm-hmm. Do you think it'll be somber and theological, or do you think it'll be political and loud?
I really hope it's the former and not the latter. It's very, look, here's one thing I will say. This is a moment that brings out the spiritual side of people, I think, and I think we've seen that actually publicly from a lot of the folks who are planning to speak. But then at the same time, there are many people, I think, who, they work in politics, but politics is also their life. And it's a defining aspect. And, I've always been someone who tries to purposefully avoid that taking over every aspect of what I do because I understand that it's less important in the grand scheme of things. But I hope that in this moment that they will be called to more represent the spiritual, the somber, the side of this that is designed to direct people toward the cross and toward faith and toward the kind of values that I believe set him apart as more than just a political activist and not just twinge into the realm of complaining about the other side, even as they have shown us how villainous they can be in reaction to his death.
Now, in that stadium, whether it's 40, 50, 60,000 people, there will be some counter-protesters. They will have signs. They'll do the Code Pink thing. And at a political rally, you shout, USA, USA, USA. I hope they shout, God bless Charlie, God bless Charlie, God bless Charlie. But I don't want the networks to show it. Do you think they'll be able to resist?
I don't. I'm sorry, Hugh. I just don't. I think that the way that this has been treated has been a very disappointing, but as I've said to you, eye-opening, I think, for a lot of Americans about how much more, and I mean, I said this on Special Report, and I can't remember, I guess it was this week, that the truth is this exposed, I think, that the radical left is a much more sizable portion of the left than any of us have wrestled with, and that the ramifications of that, I think, are very serious. You see it even in the vote today, which should have been a unanimous vote. Even if you had objections to Charlie, this should have been the easiest thing in the world for the House of Representatives to do. And yet you have almost 60 Democrats who don't just vote present, they vote no. And then there are a host of them who vote present as well. I mean, I'm sorry. I can't think of a figure who I wouldn't be willing to say this kind of stuff about that is so benign, that is so, even
an assassination victim.
I mean, this is an assassination victim. Exactly. And it's just the sort of thing where, look, Hugh, I just think this should be easy. And the fact that it's hard for so many people, the fact that their natural posture is one of partisanship over the kind of solace that should be offered to any family, to any community in this time of grief. It just is very disappointing to me, but it's also revealing of their character, and I think that we should take them at their word in this moment.
After the break, I'm going to talk with Ben about Jimmy Kimmel. But during the break, I'm talking with him about the fact that the United States Senate got to, thank you, Senator Leader Thune, confirming Mike Waltz in time for the UNGA in New York next week at the UN, where he will be a vibrant and vigorous voice for Israel and for American interests. We'll talk about Waltz during the break, come back and talk about Kimmel on the other side. Don't go anywhere. I'm back with Ben Domenech. Mike Waltz is my friend. I read Warrior Diplomat. My son worked for him for a while. He doesn't work for him anymore, not going to New York with him. But I thought we needed a UN ambassador up there to be there for UNGA when the vote is taken on recognizing a Palestinian state. It was 47 to 43. What are the 43 thinking about?
I don't get this. And again, this is one of those situations where, I'm of the belief that you vote against the president's nominees when they are deeply unqualified individuals, when they've proven that they, cannot do the job. Otherwise, I think you should vote to approve the president's nominees because they are his choice and he was elected and this is part of the job. You have to have serious, I think, concerns about someone's capabilities, but also someone's, the mindset. Are they appropriate for the job? In order to oppose them. Certainly, I just don't think you can have any of those concerns about him. And it's one of these situations where this ought to have been done much earlier. It should have been pushed through a lot earlier, but at least it got done in time for him to give the right argument against so many who are going to come together to do a very stupid thing, which, frankly, the United Nations is known for as an entity.
Can you explain, I've already done it, but let's hear Ben Domenech explain why it is so stupid to recognize a Palestinian state.
Well, personally, I think it's stupid because Palestine isn't a place. But I'm sorry. But one of the things that I think is particularly stupid about it is that in this moment, it is an act. I will focus on this moment. It is an act of rewarding the worst actors in this situation. It is an act of giving the terrorists what they want. It is an act that is designed to not just say, this worked, but to give them the lesson, this will work in the future. You can bend us, this international community, to your will if you are willing to stoop to doing deeply evil things and continue to do those evil things without any kind of approach that is designed to mitigate anything, without any kind of nods towards actual peaceful activity. No, this is not what has happened here. Instead, it's giving the terrorists what they want effectively, and it's something that should have been rejected just outright as anything that could happen prior to all the hostages being released. And, the only critique that I would have of the president's visit, to the UK is that I think he should have filleted Starmer. Even, he obviously laid out the fact that he disagreed with him on this point. But I think that it was something where he could have gone after him heavier and made a more direct point on it. And I hope that he will, of these foreign leaders who are just so cowardly in this moment.
I'm hoping Waltz follows up after the president makes his speech. Coming right back with Ben Domenech to talk about the Jimmy Kimmel controversy. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Ben Domenech. Ben, I have been explaining all day online, and I'm done, that free speech and the First Amendment are not the same thing. You and I are talking right now on an FCC-regulated platform, both radio and television, the Salem News Channel and the Salem Media Network and all my affiliates. If we use the seven deadly words, we'll be fined $1,000 per utterance per station over which it airs that is regulated by the FCC. We are licensees. We have to be decent and in the public interest. It's complicated, but it's law, and Brendan Carr has First Amendment rights too. Jimmy Kimmel said a really stupid thing. Within 4 hours, Nexstar and Sinclair had told ABC, we're pulling him, and ABC pulled him. And I'm not sure Brendan Carr had anything to do with it because the period of time was too quick. Some people think that's evidence, but it's actually not evidence, contrary evidence. But now, I think it's fair. If you don't like what Carr said, I do like what Carr said. I think we want to raise the standard of public discourse. But if you like what he said, you're free to defend him, and he is free to say it. What do you think?
So I'll take a step back and say that I will not say it's the devil's advocate position, it's the Ted Cruz advocate position, that he did not like what Brendan Carr said. He called it sounding like a mob boss and that kind of thing, and was concerned about it. And I certainly think his conservative credentials speak for themselves. And I think that those views, I do believe, speak for a portion of the American right. But I think it's a much smaller portion than people truly understand, because they have no problem, I think the vast majority of them, with the kind of thing that just happened here. And the truth is, it is the market speaking. People would like to establish a narrative, as they have established it before, that this is an administration that is cracking down on its opponents, cracking down on its enemies, et cetera, in the public square, and that it's eliminating free speech in some perspective. Where were they when the hammer of government was coming down, or threatened to come down, on the whole of Silicon Valley during the portion when the Joe Biden administration was making, you don't want that to get broke, kind of symbolic statements to them, forcing them to engage in censorship fueled by NGOs and a whole network of organizations. What I would say is, I am of the opinion, and I know I saw that your disagreement with my proposed compromise, which I hope you understand.
I do.
Pretty solidly written with tongue in cheek, because it will not happen. Namely, that I think the funniest thing in the world to do would be for Brendan Carr to spend the next 3 years going hammer and tongs against all the people for any violations that he sees, and then eliminate the FCC at the end of it, so that the left can't immediately turn around and do the same thing. But I do believe people are rule followers when it's convenient for them, but they do not like it when conservatives enforce the rules. And that is what I believe has happened in this situation. Everything Brendan Carr said, from my perspective, he is allowed to say, and I do not think that he did anything that went beyond the rules that are in place here. And the affiliates have a profit motive. They want to put things on TV that people like. Hosting decisions on programs are made by these networks based on who the affiliates like. Okay, it is simply a fact of the business. And if the affiliates don't like you and the viewers don't like you, then that's when shows get canceled. And Jimmy Kimmel was running along, skirting the edge, the lowest rated of all of these low-rated late-night shows, and he rendered himself so political that he was not someone who could even be the face of the network anymore. He couldn't be someone like Jimmy Fallon out there representing the network. So I think he was living on borrowed time anyway. But look, this whole narrative that the left is advancing now, that this is about some kind of big, noble free speech fight, more power to you, man, because this guy is not the guy you want to get in bed with on that fight, and this was not something that people are going to care about, because he was not popular. And I do not believe in any way that this is an abrogation of any responsibility for free speech. It's just absolutely laughable.
Now, I do have a colleague at Chapman University Law School who routinely stops me in the faculty lounge and says, Trump is acting as an authoritarian because he's telling businesses what to do and they're afraid to stand up to him. To which my response is, and Obama? Because it just seems to me that Eric Schmidt, in his new book, Senator Schmidt, laid out the Biden year laying on to Silicon Valley. That 86 people in the government demanded changes to moderation rules at the big tech companies, 20 of them from the White House. They don't have the statutory authority that Brandon Carr has. They're free agents.
Yes, and this is something that we've seen repeatedly over the years. You and I know how often they have gone after so many different conservative voices, using every tool at their disposal when it came to going after carriers, going after affiliates, going after all of these different entities. I mean, this is a situation that has been playing out for years, and the left had no compunction about trying to use these rules to get people canceled. It's just that people didn't run afoul of them, so they were able to survive those types of challenges. They didn't break the rules in the way that would have allowed this kind of thing. Jimmy Kimmel.
Did you ever hear the local content rule proposal, Ben?
The local content rule proposal? No, I'm not sure.
The FCC under Obama wanted to pass a rule that required every radio station to have local content, which was an attempt to kill syndicated product. That was an attack on me. That was an attack on Rush. That was an attack on Mark Levin, an attack on Gallagher, an attack on Elder. And it was dressed up in, we just want to serve the local community. Nonsense. It was an attack on conservative talk radio. And no one said a word.
And the other thing is, again, Carr has said, we might take a look at The View as well. The View is technically an ABC News program, so it does not have the kind of equal time, requirements that are of these shows, as are shows like Jimmy Kimmel's. And one of the things that comes with that, of course, is that's the reason they have to trot out somebody to read off a bullet-pointed list whenever they say a bunch of false things, because they're worried about running afoul of that. But keep in mind, this is a broadcast that has had on no conservatives, none, in the last year, effectively. And that's the kind of thing that I think we have to look at and say, is this
how are
really
its
what
ratings?
The broadcast airways are for? Huh?
Since your wife left, haven't its ratings gone like to hell?
They certainly, yes. I would say generally yes. The one thing I will say, Hugh, is if you want to talk about a place that has issues with this, keep in mind ABC is owned by Disney, and Disney, unlike all these other places, it runs on theme parks. It runs on mass media. It runs on appealing to everybody in the audience. And so I think that Bob Iger, which is, the reports are it was as high a decision as Iger. This is that level of a decision in terms of we are tired of pissing off Republicans and independents and conservatives who see this as a political broadcast and not as something that they come home for, put up their feet and listen to a bit of comedy.
I got to ask you. I think it will be Bud Light 2.0 if they bring him back. But that time slot is dead. My parents used to fall asleep watching Johnny Carson. That's what he did. That's why he had 30 million people. I just think it's a dead time slot.
I think it's a dead time slot. But I will just say this. You know what the funniest thing they could do is?
Shane Gillis.
Adam Carolla has a great podcast.
I was going to go to Shane Gillis, but I don't know if he could actually make the FCC rules.
No. He'd have to have too much Bud Light when he was on stage.
That's a very funny bit. Always good to talk to you, Ben Domenech, and good to disagree with you civilly online. Follow him on X at @BDomenech. Get his Transom Substack, and of course read The Spectator, where he contributes quite a lot. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.